Today I've got the Falcata keyboard from Asus ROG, and I do need to start off by saying that Asus did pay for the production spot on today's video. It's not your traditional sponsorship because they don't get to provide me with anything to say and they don't get to see a preview, so they're paying for my production, not my opinion. This is a niche product that at the same time tries to do everything. This is a pretty insane piece of engineering. It's a compact 75%, it's wireless, it has 8K polling, it's Hall effect, it's a split with a wrist rest, and it has tinting. It does a lot, but there's conditions to a lot of those features that we'll talk about as we move through the video. The worst news by far is that the price in the US on this is $419.99. That's higher than I expected. This was initially rumored to come out at $359.99. I'm assuming this price increase is due to our awesome tariffs right now. Didn't this used to be an affordable hobby? It's not often I unbox a keyboard in two halves, but here we are. Each side comes with a silicone wrist rest that's pressure mounted to a really stout metal frame. There's a lot in the box: a USB extender, USB-C to A converter, two different link cables, one long, one short, and the main power cable. The other box has a keycap and switch puller, a single unit control key to replace the totally unnecessary dedicated Microsoft AI Copilot key on the keyboard, two different sets of feet for height adjustment, a small Allen key, and some hardware. The actual dongle is stored on the board itself. This is a compact 75% layout, so dedicated F-row and arrow keys are here. This is split right down the middle, but because this is a Hall effect board, they can't use magnets to hold the two sides together because that would interfere with the switches. Instead, we just have a light pressure fit with bumpers to push them together horizontally. This isn't super strong. Even a light bump will separate them, and you'll have to use both hands to move the board around. I'm definitely not a product engineer, but I feel like maybe this could have been solved by using a vertical joint style attachment. A couple things to point out if you're intending to type with this as a split. Hopefully you're disciplined with your touch typing, because unlike an Alice layout that has two B keys to allow for people to hit it with their right hand, there's only one here. And we do have a split spacebar, but it's a single combined input. You can't assign one side to something else. If you're gonna use the wrist rest, which I do recommend, this is gonna require some setup. You'll need to remove these silicone plugs from the underside of the board, being really careful to not lose these. They include 3 extra in the box because of course you will. Then you'll need to use the Allen key, or more likely a small bit driver, to physically attach the frame to the board with screws. There are no extras of these included, so guard them with your life. With the frame attached, now you can pick your feet configuration. You get small and large. I like that these just screw in just a couple twists because, again, no magnets. You can do a traditional tilt where the top of the board is higher, or you can do a tint where the inside edge is higher for a more ergonomic typing experience with your wrists rotated. You've got high and low options for each of these. So this does tint for ergonomics, but not to the extreme degree like you'd find on something like the Digma Defy. At first, I didn't understand why this wrist rest assembly needed to be so complicated. You can just pull this off and use the pad flat on the desk, or you can just use a Carpio like I always do. That works fine with the board flat or tilted, but when you tint, you want your wrist to rotate with the angle of the board, and that is why the wrist rest needs to move with the keyboard. It's really comfortable. It's actually effective as a wrist rest, unlike some gaming keyboards, and it's nice that you can just pull the pads off to clean them. But it's not quick to remove the frame from the board in the event you don't want to use it. On the topic of wireless, the left side of the board is the brain, because if you're only going to use one side standalone, this is obviously the side you want for gaming. This frees up a ton of mouse space, more than even a 60% layout, and it's wireless, and you still get your F keys too. It's pretty smart that they figured out to make the Windows key the function key when you're running the left side only, so you still get access to your dual function layer assignments. This is sick until you need to type something for whatever reason. And in those times that you need a full keyboard, there needs to be a jumper cable because the right side is not independently wireless. Part of this is that the board needs to communicate everything quickly, being both Hall effect and 8K polling, and part of it is that there's a battery in both sides, which we'll talk about in a minute. The included link cables are specifically for this, and they warn not to use other cables or to use the link ports on the keyboard to try to charge your phone or whatever. It's not a great look because the cables are thick. It's safe to remove these stickers for aesthetics if you want, because the connectors themselves are actually labeled. Should point out too that it's not just their 2.4 gigahertz SpeedNova wireless either. There is Bluetooth here also, with connectivity for 3 devices. The board itself is mostly a plastic body, aluminum top plate, floating switch design. Feels really similar in design language to the Azoth or the Falcon, but they've ditched the wide gamery font from those boards for a more reserved font, and I'm a very big fan of this move. The keycaps on my copy are double shot PBT, and they've got a shortened stem design that Asus says reduces stem wobble. On the left side of the board, we have what they're calling the multi-wheel. This feels really satisfying. It's not cheap feeling at all. This controls all the usual suspects like media keys. There's a custom setting in here. It controls the actuation point of the switch, the rapid trigger sensitivity, either global or on a per key basis. You can do all that on the hardware, no software needed, and the indicator panel shows you what you're doing. We also have the rapid trigger toggle switch from the Falcon. It also is really satisfying, and it's tough for me to not just use this as a fidget toy when I'm sitting at my desk. Switches are a new revision of their HFX magnetic switches, and I really liked the OG HFX switches switches in the Falchion. This is now a multi-piece stem design, with the concept being that if there is any stem wobble, it's segmented from the magnet, so ASUS says this has a higher accuracy. It also has lighter actuation, reduced travel distance, and is accurate to 0.01 millimeters, though you can only still set the minimum actuation at 0.1 millimeters. These are factory lubed, they feel really smooth. There's 4 layers of sound dampening in here, and it is a gasket mount. It feels good to type on, but I feel like the Falchion HFX sounds better, lower pitched. Stabilizers here again feel really good, very smooth, no rattle. It is important to point out that ASUS uses a lower magnet setup for this board, so while it's technically hot swap, you're not going to have the option of moving to some of the more popular center magnet aftermarket switches. A lot of people don't realize that ASUS just kind of quietly makes some of the best switches on the market, whether mechanical or Hall effect, so I really don't see this being a big issue. I think the majority of people who aren't custom keyboard snobs, and I say that with love, will be perfectly fine with these. For Hall effect features, it's pretty full boat. We have almost everything you'd expect to see in an analog board. Custom actuation, mod tap, dynamic keystroke, rapid trigger, and their version of snap tap that they call speed tap. I'm guessing Razer's got some pretty intense copyright lawyers, because everyone can say rapid trigger for whatever reason, but every version of snap tap is called something different. If somehow you're still new to analog boards, rapid trigger allows the switch to reset at the exact point you release it, making for much faster inputs. Unlike a lot of claims in gaming keyboards, this actually makes a tangible, noticeable performance improvement on games that have really tight input or movement engines. Speed tap, or SOCD, is now integrated into most boards. It interrupts the last input with a new one. This is most commonly used for strafing left and right, and it works so well in certain FPS titles that famously it's been banned in CSGO. I would also warn that if you buy a board like this, don't go into global settings and just drop everything to 0.1 millimeter because it's fastest. You're gonna accidentally hit a ton of stuff you don't want to. The stuff you hit the most needs to be 0.1, like WASD, jump, whatever. But anything else you might accidentally hit in game, like pulling up a map or a leaderboard, leave that at a higher value like 1.5 or 2 millimeter. Normally, I would tell you that you need to go into Armory Crate to set all this stuff up, and that always seems to be a deal breaker for a lot of people with ASUS stuff, but this is now their second board to finally use a web-based configurator called GearLink. There's some really important stuff here. Number 1, you cannot use Armory Crate for this board for anything else other than firmware. Number 2, GearLink is still in beta, and number 3, parts of it definitely feel like it's still in beta. The custom setting on the multi-wheel doesn't do anything by default. You need to set it. And there's an option in here to launch a program, but instead of getting to pick one, your only option is Microsoft Copilot AI. Remapping keys is also surprisingly limited. There's no combos available, so you can't do like Shift plus, Control plus, Alt plus, whatever. You can access function plus another key for anything that's not hard assigned in the firmware. You can record macros on the hardware itself, but it's tricky, and there's nothing in GearLink to offer a visual guide or provide more complex macros, at least not right now. ASUS says it's coming, but I don't know when. Outside of that, the only thing I really noticed was that their default red color isn't really red. This is red, but everything else was accurate. A big one that's not here is the ability to use the analog functions to emulate joystick input, like we see on Wooting and the Razer Huntsman boards. It's a solid feature for any game where you don't want just the normal on-off nature of a key switch. Think games with like a walk versus run mechanic or driving games. It usually comes with a little headache, and it's not the most popular feature out there, but it is important to point out that like the SteelSeries Apex, it's just not offered here. So this is an 8K polling rate board, even with this little dongle like we see on the Harp 2 Ace mouse. But the way this board handles 8K is interesting. It's wireless, so battery life is a concern. You can't just universally set this board to 1000, 2K, 4K, whatever, like we see on other keyboards. Everything here, the RGB, Hall effect, wireless, high polling rate, should be smoking this battery. How they manage it is kind of brilliant, but a little confusing. So 2.4 wireless mode with the default lighting of 50% will get you 104 hours. Lighting off gets you over 200. How they pull this off is that this board in default mode runs at 250 hertz polling rate when it's idle, and when you press a key, it shifts to 8K. Logic would say that that process will introduce latency that will offset the performance of 8K, but we'll talk about that in a second. So that's normal mode, and you can override keys if you're choosing to stay at the 8K ready all the time, but the more you do this, the more you'll reduce the battery life. You can set them all to 8K if you really want to cook your battery. Moving to zone mode has a preset selection of keys that always stay at 8K. Again, you can edit this, and all the lighting is off in this mode. Since you can edit the normal mode and you can turn lighting off manually, I'm really not sure what purpose zone mode serves except for being able to swap to it quickly with hotkeys. Power saving mode is all 250 hertz polling all the time and no lighting, so you're just diving deeper into that 200-hour spec. Though this would be mainly for basic typing and productivity work, not gaming. So unless you specifically force the board board to, it's not really running 8K polling full time. And does this matter in game? Now, I personally am not an 8K believer. The latency values are so small, they're measured in microseconds, not even milliseconds. I think they're too small for a human to notice. They're certainly too small for me to notice. So this idea of shifting from 250 to 8K on demand may introduce some latency, but it doesn't slow down my gameplay. I used this board wireless for the entire 2 weeks of testing. I used it in all modes, including forced 8K on the whole board, and it never felt different, but it always felt good. I play with a wireless headset and a wireless mouse. I've had some not so great experiences on wireless keyboards before, but not with this one. It feels really good. I don't personally type mid-match, so having the split section was nice. This will probably be on my desk for a while, actually. Overall, I really like what they've done here. It's impressive for sure. I do like the move to GearLink, but it needs a little more love. With Hall Effector analog boards being so dependent on software features, if your software is still in beta, then for your end user, it means your product is too. And yikes, the price is insane. This was already an expensive board at the rumored launch price of $359.99, but the tariffs really hurt. There's plenty of just regular Hall Effect boards out there at lower prices. If you're not shopping name brand, make that way lower prices. But the Falcata is 75%, it's 8K, it's wireless, and it's a split. If you want or need all that in one product, this is currently the only place to get it, and you're gonna pay a premium for that. I don't see a lot of people being on the fence about this one. Either this is something you're really excited about, you've been waiting for it, or you know right away that it's not for you. That's it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.